The grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly was the largest room ever built by any species in known space. It floated at the heart of Station Nexus Prime. It's a massive structure where all the great powers of the galaxy sent their representatives. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, each section filled with beings from different worlds. Some had scales, others had feathers, and some looked like nothing humans had ever imagined. The air itself was a mixture designed to let most species breathe, though many still wore masks or suits. Ambassador Park Yuna stood at the edge of the human section, watching the chamber fill. She was a small woman by any standard, with gray streaks in her black hair and calm eyes that revealed nothing. She had served humanity for 30 years in various posts across the galaxy, and she had learned one important lesson. Aliens respected silence more than words. Beside her stood Captain Lee Taiho, her military attaché. He was tall and broad, with the bearing of a soldier who had seen real combat. The border conflicts had left scars on his hands that he never bothered to hide. He leaned close to her and spoke quietly. "The count is against us. 63 species have already declared support for the protocols." Park Yuna nodded slightly. She had expected this. The containment protocols were not really about safety or stability. They were about fear. Humanity had joined the Galactic Assembly only 40 years ago, and in that short time they had grown faster than anyone predicted. They built ships that matched vessels designed over centuries. They developed medicines that other species could not replicate. They asked questions that made older civilizations uncomfortable, and so the Assembly had decided to put a leash on them. The protocols would limit human expansion to only 3 star systems. They would ban humans from developing faster engines or better weapons. They would keep humanity small, contained, and controlled. A deep tone echoed through the chamber, signaling the start of the session. Counselor Vreth rose to the central platform. He was an insectoid being, nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the chamber lights like broken mirrors. He had been Speaker of the Assembly for 200 years, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "This session will address the matter of human containment protocols," Vreth announced. His translator converted his clicking speech into smooth galactic common. "The proposal has been submitted by the Council of Elder Species. We will hear final statements before the vote." "But!" Park Yuna felt Captain Lee shift beside her. Other human delegates sat in tense silence behind them. They all knew what was coming. "The human delegation may speak," Vreth said. Gesturing with one of his upper arms, Park Yuna walked to the speaking circle at the center of the platform. She moved slowly, deliberately, making sure every eye in the chamber was on her. When she reached the circle, she stood perfectly still for a long moment.
"Honored Counselor.
Distinguished representatives." Her voice was calm and clear. "The Human Confederacy has reviewed the containment protocols in detail. We understand the concerns that have motivated this proposal. We acknowledge that our rapid development has caused uncertainty among older member species." She paused, letting her words settle. "However, we cannot accept these terms. Instead, we offer a counterproposal. We ask for equal development rights as guaranteed to all Tutu civilizations under Assembly Charter. We ask for recognition of our contributions to galactic medicine, trade, and exploration. We ask only for what every member species has received, the opportunity to grow according to our own abilities." The chamber buzzed with whispered conversations. Park Yuna waited. Counselor Vreth raised one arm for silence. When the chamber quieted, he spoke with the tone of someone explaining something obvious to a child. "The human proposal is noted. However, the Council of Elder Species has determined that humanity lacks sufficient civilizational maturity for Tier 2.
Classification.
Your species has existed among the stars for less than a single standard century. Some civilizations represented here have been traveling between stars for 100,000 years. Your request cannot be granted at this time." Park Yuna felt the words hit her like stones. Not because they were unexpected, but because they were spoken with such casual dismissal. 100,000 years of history, and they still could not see humanity as anything more than children. "May I ask," she said carefully, if the assembly will at least vote on our counterproposal. Vreth's compound eyes seem to glitter. That will not be necessary. The Council has already determined the proper course of action. The containment protocols will proceed to a vote. Around the chamber, several alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. This was not how the assembly was supposed to work. Every species had the right to have their proposals heard. But no one spoke against Vreth. No one ever did. Park Yuna stood completely still. Captain Lee watched her from the human section, his hand moving unconsciously toward his sidearm. The other human delegates held their breath. Then Park Yuna did something no one expected. She reached up and removed her translation earpiece. She set it gently on the speaking platform. Then she turned to face the human section and spoke in Korean, her voice clear and strong. "Stand up. We are leaving." Captain Lee rose first, then the others, one by one, until all 15 members of the human delegation were on their feet. They moved toward the exit with perfect discipline, their footsteps echoing in the suddenly silent chamber. Park Yuna turned back to face Counselor Vreth. She picked up her earpiece, placed it in her ear, and spoke in Galactic Common. The Galactic Assembly has made its position clear. Humanity accepts this clarity. Effective immediately, the Human Confederacy suspends all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Assembly. We withdraw from these proceedings and from all treaties, agreements, and partnerships that bind us to this body. She paused. And when she spoke again, her voice was ice. When you are ready to speak with us as equals, you may send a delegation to Earth. Until that day, we have nothing more to say to each other. She turned and walked toward the exit. The other humans followed her in perfect formation. Their footsteps were the only sound in the chamber. Counselor Vreth stood frozen on the platform. In 200 years, no species had ever walked out of the assembly. Disagreements happened, votes were lost, but everyone stayed. Everyone played the game. The humans did not play games. As the delegation reached the main doors, Captain Lee held them open for Ambassador Park. She passed through without looking back. One by one, the others followed. The doors closed behind them with a soft sound that seemed to echo forever. For 3 heartbeats, the chamber remained silent. Then chaos erupted. Delegates from dozens of species began shouting at once. Some demanded that the humans be brought back immediately. Others called for military action. A few suggested that perhaps the assembly had made a mistake, but their voices were drowned out. Counselor Vreth struck the speaking platform with all 4 arms, demanding order. But even his authority could not quiet the storm in the corridor outside. Ambassador Park Yuna walked steadily toward the human shuttle. Captain Lee fell into step beside her. "That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I have ever seen," he said quietly. Park Yuna allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps it was both, but it was necessary. What happens now? Now we go home, and we wait. Wait for what? Park Yuna looked at him with eyes that held no doubt. For them to realize what they have lost. The human shuttle departed from Station Nexus Prime 17 minutes later. It did not request clearance from Assembly Traffic Control. It did not acknowledge any attempts at communication. It simply accelerated toward the edge of the system and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, the greatest assembly of civilizations in galactic history descended into panic, and humanity said nothing at all. 2 weeks after humanity walked out of the Galactic Assembly, the galaxy began to fall apart. Director Baek Ji-woo sat in the command center of Station Quiet Moon, a hidden facility that officially did not exist. It floated in the darkness between stars, far from any trade routes or patrol zones. From here, she commanded the Human Intelligence Service. And from here, she watched the chaos spread. Her screen showed intercepted communications from across the galaxy. Alien diplomats screaming at each other. Trade officials demanding answers. Military commanders asking for orders that never came. It was, she thought, almost beautiful. "Report from Section 7, said one of her officers. "The Virati medical fleet has been sitting at the border for 3 days. They are running out of the compound." Baek Ji-woo nodded. The compound in question was a simple medicine called HB7, used to treat a common infection among the Virati. Human biochemistry produced it naturally as a waste product. And for 20 years, humanity had been selling it to the Virati for almost nothing. It was a gesture of friendship, a way to build trust. Now there was no more HB7 crossing the border, and Virati children were starting to die. Any military movement? She asked. None, Director. The Virati ambassador has been trying to contact Earth directly, but all channels are closed. Beek Juwu allowed herself a thin smile. The silence was working exactly as planned. Far across the galaxy, Trade Minister Osuman was reviewing the economic projections from her office on Earth. She was a round-faced woman with quick eyes and a mind. It could calculate trade flows faster than most computers. For 30 years, she had been quietly making humanity indispensable to the galactic economy. Most species did not understand economics. They thought in terms of power and territory, of fleets and weapons. They did not notice the small things, the shipping contracts, the maintenance agreements, the technical partnerships that bound the galaxy together. But Osuman noticed everything. She pulled up a holographic display showing the major trade routes of the galaxy. Red lines appeared wherever human involvement was critical. When she was finished, the map looked like it was bleeding. 63% of all advanced medical supplies pass through human hands at some point, she said to her assistant. 41% of navigation data for deep space travel comes from human probe networks. 27% of all ship maintenance in the outer systems is performed by human contractors. Her assistant, a young man named Quan Ji-hoon, stared at the map. How did we become so important without anyone noticing? Osuman laughed softly. They noticed. They just thought we were serving them. They never considered that we might stop. On the edge of human space, Admiral Cho Min-ho stood on the bridge of the battleship Eternal Dawn. He was a gray-haired man with a face like carved stone, a veteran of 30 years of service. His fleet, the Third Fleet of the Human Confederacy, had been quietly repositioning for the past 2 weeks. Officially, they were conducting training exercises. Unofficially, they were preparing for war, Admiral said his tactical officer, Commander Yusira. Long-range sensors detect an assembly patrol approaching the border. 12 vessels, light cruiser class. Cho Min-ho studied the display. The assembly ships were not in attack formation. They were approaching slowly, almost hesitantly. They are scared, he said. Sir, look at their spacing. Too far apart, too cautious. They do not know what we will do. That fear is our greatest weapon right now. He turned to his communications officer. Broadcast a single message on all frequencies. Tell them the border is closed. No exceptions. And if they do not turn back? Cho Min-ho's expression did not change. Then we teach them what closed means. The assembly patrol turned back. In the great halls of Station Nexus Prime, Counselor Vreth was facing the consequences of his arrogance. Species that had never spoken against him were now demanding answers. The Virati ambassador had made an official complaint about the medical crisis. The Kellis Trade Federation was threatening to withdraw from the assembly if commerce was not restored, and through all of it, humanity remained silent. Vreth had sent 17 diplomatic missions to human space in 2 weeks. Every single one had been turned away at the border without explanation. He had offered compromises, concessions, even a personal apology from the Council of Elder Species. None of it mattered. The humans were not negotiating. They were not even responding. They cannot maintain this forever, Vreth said to his advisors. Their economy depends on galactic trade as much as anyone's. One of his advisors, a small reptilian being named Salaith, shook her head. With respect, Counselor, our intelligence suggests otherwise. The humans have been stockpiling resources for years. They have hidden agricultural stations beyond our maps. They have trade relationships with minor species outside the Assembly's control. They are not desperate. We are. Vreth's compound eyes flickered with anger. Then we will use force. The Assembly fleet can overwhelm their defenses within a standard month. Perhaps, Salath said carefully. But at what cost? And more importantly, to what end? Even if we defeat their military, We cannot force their scientists to make medicine for us. We cannot force their engineers to repair our ships. The things we need from humanity require their cooperation, not their submission. Vreth fell silent. For the first time in 2 centuries, he did not know what to do. In the shadows of the diplomatic quarter on Station Nexus Prime, Ambassador Kellis of the Varadi hegemony was taking a dangerous risk. She had found a back channel to human space, an old communication relay that had been set up years ago for emergency contact. She sent a simple message. "This is Kellis. I am a friend. Please respond." For 3 days, there was nothing. Then, on the 4th day, a response came. "We know who you are, Ambassador. We remember your kindness. What do you want?" Kellis felt relief flood through her. She had been one of the few alien diplomats who had always treated humans with respect. She had argued against the containment protocols. She had warned Vreth that this would happen. Now she hoped that history would count for something. "There are factions within the Assembly pushing for military action," she sent. "War leader Thaxis believes he can defeat you with acceptable losses. He is gaining support. I wanted you to know." The response came quickly. "We appreciate the warning. Tell Thaxis something for us. Tell him that humans do not believe in acceptable losses. When we fight, everyone loses." Khalees read the message 3 times. Then she deleted it and returned to her quarters, her hearts heavy with fear. Back on Station Quiet Moon, Director Beek Ji-woo received the intelligence about war leader Thaxis. She immediately forwarded it to Earth, along with her assessment. "The Assembly is approaching a decision point," she wrote. "They will either come to us as supplicants, or they will come to us with guns. We should be ready for both." On Earth, Secretary General Shindoin read her report in his private office. He was an old man now, with white hair and hands that trembled slightly, but his mind was as sharp as ever. He had known this day would come. Humanity had prepared for it for decades, quietly and patiently. They had built hidden fleets and secret alliances. They had made themselves necessary to the galaxy's survival while never appearing threatening. Now the trap was complete. The only question was whether the Assembly was smart enough to surrender, or stupid enough to fight. Shindoyon looked out his window at the night sky, where humanity's future waited among the stars. "Let them come," he said softly. "We are ready." And the silence continued. The Security Council of the Galactic Assembly met in a sealed chamber deep within Station Nexus Prime. Only the most powerful species were allowed inside. And today, every seat was filled. War leader Thaxis stood at the center, his massive armored body filling the space like a weapon made flesh. Thaxis was a being designed for battle. His species, the Hekari, had been warriors for 50,000 years. They had conquered dozens of worlds before joining the Assembly, and they had never truly lost their hunger for combat. "The human problem has a simple solution," he said, his voice like grinding stone. "We strike fast, we strike hard, and we break their will to resist. I have prepared a complete battle plan." A holographic display appeared, showing human space. Red arrows indicated attack routes. Numbers showed troop deployments and fleet movements. "We have superior numbers in every category," Thaxis continued. 300 capital ships to their 60. 40 million ground troops to their 8 million. The mathematics are clear. We will achieve total victory within 40 standard days. Counselor Vreth listened from his seat, his compound eyes unreadable. Around him, other council members nodded along with Thaxis's presentation. The numbers were indeed impressive, but numbers were not everything. "Before we proceed," Vreth said slowly, "I have brought someone who may offer valuable perspective. Dr. Kong Yoonji. Please come forward." A door opened at the side of the chamber, and a human woman walked in. She was middle-aged, with tired eyes and gray in her hair. She wore the robes of a scientific advisor, not the uniform of her birth nation. Dr. Kong Yoonji had left Earth 15 years ago to pursue research opportunities in assembly space. She had believed that science should have no borders, that knowledge should belong to everyone. For a long time, she had been happy among the stars. Working alongside alien colleagues who became her friends, But now she stood before the Security Council, and she felt like a traitor in a room full of predators. "Dr. Kong," Vreth said, "you have lived among us for many years, but you were born human. You understand how they think. Please share your assessment of War Leader Thaxis's plan." Kung Yunji looked at the holographic display, at the arrows and numbers that promised easy victory. Then she looked at the council members, at their confident faces and powerful bodies. "You will lose," she said simply. The chamber exploded with angry voices. Thaxis stepped toward her, his hand moving toward his weapon. But Vreth raised an arm for silence. "Explain," he commanded. Kong. Youngji took a deep breath. For 15 years, she had tried to forget where she came from. Now she had no choice but to remember. "War Leader Thaxis has calculated everything except the one thing that matters," she said. "He has counted ships and soldiers and weapons, but he has not counted the human spirit." Thaxis made a dismissive sound. "Spirit does not stop plasma cannons," Kong Hunji agreed. "But it changes how battles are fought. And that is what you do not understand." She walked to the holographic display and began pulling up historical records from Earth. "Look at this. A small island nation defeating an empire 10 times its size. Look at this. A group of farmers with primitive weapons driving out a superpower. And this, and this. And this image after image appeared. Battles that made no mathematical sense. Victories that should have been impossible. Humans do not surrender," Kang Yunji continued. "When they are cornered, they do not accept defeat. They adapt. They endure. They find ways to hurt you that you never imagined. The harder you push them, the harder they fight back." "Every species says such things about themselves," Thaxis said dismissively. "Every species is wrong," Kang Yunji replied. "I have lived among you for 15 years. I have studied your histories, your wars, your psychologies. No species fights like humans. They are not more brave or more intelligent. They are simply more stubborn. They refuse to accept reality when reality tells them they should lose." She turned to face the council directly. "Your battle plan assumes that humans will fight conventionally. They will not. They will use weapons you have never seen. They will attack targets you consider sacred. They will sacrifice themselves in ways that you find incomprehensible. And even if you win, you will not win completely. They will resist forever. They will teach their children to resist. 1,000 years from now, humans will still be trying to destroy you." The chamber was silent. "There is more," Kang Hunji said. "Our intelligence has obtained information about human military preparations. Information that changes everything." She pulled up new data on the display. Vreth leaned forward, his eyes widening. "These are hidden shipyards beyond the borders of mapped space," Kang Yunji explained. "The humans have been building in secret for at least 30 years. Our estimates of their fleet strength are wrong by a factor of 3. They have at least 180 capital ships, not 60. Murmurs spread through the council. But Kang Yunji was not finished. "There is also this." She displayed weapon specifications that made several council members gasp. The humans developed these technologies years ago, but never shared them with the assembly. Planet crackers. Biological agents targeted to specific genetic profiles. Weapons that could destroy entire civilizations. "They never used them," one council member said hopefully. "They never needed to," Kang Hunji replied. "But they will use them now. I know my people. If you invade their space, they will burn everything rather than let you take it. And they will take you with them." She looked at War Leader Thaxis with something close to pity. "Your plan gives us a 90% chance of military victory, but it gives us a 0% chance of survival. The humans have a doctrine. We obtained a copy through intelligence channels. Do you want to know what it says?" No one spoke. It says, "If we fall, we do not fall alone." General Yoon Hannah had written those words. She was the architect of human defense strategy, a woman who had spent her entire career preparing for this day. From her command center on Earth's moon, she watched the same intelligence reports that the assembly was receiving. She knew that they were learning the truth about human strength. She wanted them to learn it. "Fear was a weapon too," General said her aide, Colonel Park Jun-ho. The Assembly Security Council has ended their meeting. They did not vote on military action. Yunhana nodded. Good. That means they are finally thinking clearly. Do you believe they will back down? Yunhana turned to look at Earth hanging in the darkness of space, blue and green and beautiful. She thought about the billions of people down there, living their lives unaware of how close they had come to extinction. I do not know, she admitted. Humans understand stubbornness because we are stubborn ourselves. But these aliens have ruled the galaxy for 100,000 years. They have never had to back down. They may not know how, and if they attack anyway. Yunhana's face hardened. Then we show them what humans are made of, and we make them regret it forever. In the Assembly Security Council chamber, Counselor Vreth sat alone after the others had left. He stared at the holographic display, at the information that had destroyed all his certainties. For 200 years, he had guided the Assembly with wisdom and strength. He had maintained peace among species that had been killing each other for millennia. He had believed that he understood power, but he had never understood humanity. They were not children. They were not primitives waiting to be taught. They were survivors of a brutal world, forged by competition and hardship into something dangerous. They had hidden their strength, played the role of harmless newcomers. And all the while, they had been preparing. The containment protocols had not been about protecting the galaxy. They had been about protecting the old powers from competition. And now those old powers were about to pay the price? Vreth made a decision that no speaker had ever made before. He would go to the humans himself. He would offer them what they wanted. It was the only way to save the Assembly from the monster it had created. And somewhere in human space, Ambassador Park Yuna received word that the Assembly was finally ready to talk. She smiled. The waiting was almost over. 3 months had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Assembly, and the galaxy was falling into ruin. On the Virati homeworld, hospitals were rationing the last supplies of HB7. Thousands had already died. From infections that should have been easily treated, the government was facing riots in major cities, and the military was threatening to take control. The Kellis Trade Federation had lost 40% of its economy. Ships sat empty in ports because no one could navigate the deep space routes that humans had mapped. Factories closed because spare parts were no longer available. Unemployment spread like a disease. Even the great powers of the Assembly were suffering. The Hikari war fleet could not move beyond their own borders, because their engines required human-made components that were no longer being shipped. The ancient archives of the Vethri Collective were degrading because the preservation technology had been maintained by human engineers everywhere. The same story repeated itself. Humanity had become woven into the fabric of galactic civilization so deeply that pulling them out was tearing everything apart. On Earth, Trade Minister Osumin watched the reports come in with grim satisfaction. She had warned them. 20 years ago, she had told Secretary General Shin Do-yeon that this strategy was dangerous, that making humanity indispensable was a double-edged sword. But Shin Do-yeon had been wise. He understood that the Assembly would never respect humanity unless they had no choice. And now they had no choice. Verity have requested emergency humanitarian assistance, her assistant reported. They are offering significant concessions in exchange for medicine shipments. Osumin shook her head. We are not negotiating with individual species. The Assembly created this situation. The Assembly must solve it. People are dying, Minister. People are always dying somewhere. Osumin's voice was hard, but her eyes showed pain. She was not a cruel woman, but she understood something that kind people often forgot. Mercy shown to enemies who do not respect you is simply weakness. If we help the Virati now, we teach the Assembly that they can ignore us until they need something, then cry for help. That lesson cannot be taught. On Station Nexus Prime, a younger generation of diplomats was forcing change. They had grown up watching their elders make mistakes, and they were not willing to let those mistakes destroy everything. Ambassador Kellis of the Virati led a coalition of 30 species in demanding action. They confronted Counselor Vreth in his private chambers, surrounded him with their anger and desperation. You created this disaster, Kellis said, her voice trembling with controlled fury. You dismissed the humans like children. You ignored our warnings. Now our people are suffering because of your arrogance. Vareth's compound eyes reflected their faces. For the first time in 2 centuries, he looked old. What would you have me do? The humans will not respond to our messages. They have rejected every offer. Then you must go to them yourself, Kellis said. In person, you must show them that the assembly is willing to humble itself. A speaker of the assembly does not humble himself before lesser species. Kellis stepped closer, her fear forgotten in her anger. There are no lesser species anymore, Counselor. The humans have proven that. Either you accept that truth, or you watch the assembly burn. The other diplomats voiced their agreement. Vareth looked at their faces and saw that he had no support left. The old order was crumbling around him. Very well, he said quietly. I will go. The assembly delegation departed for human space 3 days later. Counselor Vareth led the mission personally, accompanied by representatives from 12 species and a security deta. That was more for ceremony than protection. As they approached the human border, Captain Lee Taiho's patrol intercepted them. His ship, the cruiser Silent Thunder, blocked their path with weapons powered and ready. Assembly vessel. You are entering human Confederacy space, Lee Taiho announced over the communication channel. State your purpose. We are a diplomatic mission from the Galactic Assembly, came the reply. We request passage to meet with human leadership. Lee Taiho smiled to himself. He remembered standing in the Grand Chamber, watching Ambassador Park Yuno walk out while the assembly did nothing. He remembered every insult, every dismissal, every time humans had been treated as something less than equal. Hold your position, he said. We are considering your request. He made them wait for 6 hours. During those 6 hours, he made sure to broadcast regular updates on open channels. Assembly delegation still waiting for permission. Request under review. Every species in the galaxy would know that the great Counselor Veth had been forced to sit at the human border like a beggar asking for scraps. Finally, permission was granted. The assembly ships were escorted to a military station on the edge of human space. It was a small, unremarkable facility. It's nothing like the grand chambers where aliens usually received visitors. Ambassador. Park Yuno was waiting for them in a simple conference room. She wore her usual plain clothes, and her expression revealed nothing. Beside her sat a translator and 2 aides. There was no ceremony, no welcome reception, no acknowledgement of Reth's status. Reth entered the room and stopped. The humans did not stand. They did not bow. They simply looked at him with calm, patient eyes. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Vreth did something he had never done in 200 years of leadership. He lowered his head in a gesture of submission. On behalf of the Galactic Assembly, he said, his voice heavy, I apologize for the treatment humanity has received. The containment protocols were unjust. Our dismissal of your concerns was wrong. I ask for your forgiveness and your return to the Assembly. Park Yuna let the silence stretch. Then she nodded slightly. We appreciate your words, Counselor. But words alone are not enough. A holographic display appeared above the conference table. Secretary General Shin Doyan's image flickered into existence. He was on Earth, watching through secure channels, but his presence filled the room. Counselor Vreth, Shin Doyan said. His voice was old but strong. Humanity has prepared a list of conditions for our return to the Assembly. These conditions are not negotiable. The display changed to show text. Vreth read it, and his compound eyes flickered with shock. Full Tier 1 status for humanity effective immediately. A permanent seat on the Security Council with full voting rights. Financial reparations for 30 years of discriminatory treatment. A formal declaration by the Assembly that the containment protocols were unjust and illegal. Removal of all restrictions on human development and expansion. Vreth looked up from the display. These terms would reshape the entire structure of galactic governance. Some species have waited 10,000 years for Tier 1 status. Those species did not build the technology that keeps your ships flying, Park Yuna said calmly. Those species did not develop the medicine that keeps your people alive. Those species did not map the routes that make galactic trade possible. We did. And we did it in 40 years. The elder species will never accept this. Shindoyan's image leaned forward slightly. Then the elder species will have to explain to their populations why they are dying of treatable diseases and starving because trade has collapsed. We are not the ones who need this agreement, Counselor. You are. Vreth looked at the faces around him. His own delegation offered no support. They were as desperate as everyone else. How long do we have to consider these terms? 1 week, Park Yuna said. After that, our offer is withdrawn, and we proceed with independent development. We have allies now. We have resources. We do not need the assembly. She stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. You gave us 40 years of disrespect, Counselor. We are giving you 7 days to correct it. I suggest you use them wisely. The human delegation left the room without another word. Vreth remained seated, staring at the terms displayed on the hologram. Behind him, Ambassador Kellis spoke quietly. They are not bluffing. They will walk away and never come back. I know, Vreth said. He suddenly felt very old, very tired. I know. 1 week. To save the assembly or watch it die, the reckoning had finally arrived. The week passed like a century across the galaxy. Debates raged in every capital and every council chamber. The elder species demanded rejection of humanity's terms. They spoke of pride and tradition, of the natural order that had governed the galaxy for 100,000 years. They called the human demands an insult, a violation of everything the assembly stood for, but the younger species had stopped listening. On the Virati homeworld, riots had turned into revolution. The government fell, and the new leaders immediately announced support for accepting human terms. On Kellis stations, workers refused to operate until their representatives voted for reconciliation. Even among the Hikari war leader Thaxis faced challenges from officers who understood that a war with humanity would destroy them all. One by one, the old powers found themselves isolated. Their threats meant nothing when their economies were collapsing. Their military strength meant nothing when their ships could not move without human technology. Their ancient wisdom meant nothing when their people were suffering. On the 7th day, as the Galactic Assembly voted, the result was not even close. 312 species voted to accept humanity's terms. Only 3 voted against, the hardliners who would rather die than admit they had been wrong. 17 abstained, but their abstentions changed nothing. Humanity had won. The ceremony took place in the Grand Chamber. It's the same room where Ambassador Park Yuna had walked out 3 months earlier. But everything was different now. The human delegation entered through the main doors, not the side entrance reserved for minor species. They walked to the central platform, not the outer rings where they had been placed before. And when they sat down, they sat at the table of the Security Council. In seats that had been empty since the Assembly's founding, Ambassador Park Yuna looked around the chamber at the thousands of alien faces watching her. Some showed resentment. Some showed fear. But many showed something she had never seen before. Respect. Counselor Vreth stood at the speaking platform. His movements were slower now, his voice less commanding. The past 3 months had aged him in ways that centuries had not. Representatives of the Galactic Assembly, he began. We are gathered here to witness a historic moment. By formal vote, this body has agreed to recognize the Human Confederacy as a Tier 1 civilization with full rights and privileges. This recognition is effective immediately. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried genuine regret. The Assembly also acknowledges that the containment protocols were unjust and illegal. They violated the principles upon which this body was founded, the principles of equality, respect, and mutual cooperation among species. We formally apologize to humanity for this failure and commit ourselves to ensuring it never happens again. The chamber was silent. Vreth continued. Finally, the Assembly welcomes humanity to the Security Council as a permanent member with full voting rights. From this day forward, no decision affecting the galaxy will be made without human participation. He stepped back from the platform and gestured toward the human delegation. Ambassador Park, please respond on behalf of your people. Park Yuna rose and walked to the speaking platform. She stood where Vreth had stood, where she had been dismissed months ago. The memory felt distant now, like something that had happened to another person. "Thank you, Counselor Vreth," she said. Her voice was calm and clear, filling the chamber through the translation systems. Humanity accepts this recognition and these acknowledgments. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species from across the galaxy. "I want to be clear about something. Humanity did not want this conflict. We did not want to walk away from the assembly. We did not want to watch people suffer while we waited for justice. We wanted only what every species here has always had: the right to grow, to develop, to reach for the stars without someone else's hand holding us back." Her voice softened slightly. "We walked out because you gave us no other choice. We made you suffer because you would not listen any other way. This is not a victory we celebrate. It is a wound that we hope will heal." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "But let me also be clear about the future. Humanity will not forget what happened here. We will not pretend that everything is fine now. Trust must be rebuilt, and that takes time. We will work with the Assembly. We will contribute to galactic civilization, but we will also watch. We will protect ourselves. We will never again allow anyone to put a leash on our future." Her eyes found Counselor Vreth's. "We hope we never have to walk out again. But if we must, we will. And next time, we will not come back." She returned to her seat. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, applause began to spread through the alien delegates. It grew until the chamber echoed with it, far away on Earth. Secretary General Shindo Yun watched the ceremony through secure channels. He sat in his office, surrounded by the mementos of a long life, photographs of family, awards from forgotten wars, a small stone from the first human colony on Mars. He was too old to travel to Station, Nexus Prime. His doctors had forbidden it. But he had needed to see this moment to know that everything he had worked for had not been in vain. "Sir," said his aide, "you should rest." The doctors said, "I know what the doctors said." Shindoyan smiled slightly. Let an old man have his moment. He watched Park Yuna shake hands with alien diplomats, watched the human flag take its place among the emblems of the great powers. His people, his species, had done something that should have been impossible. They had faced the entire galaxy and refused to blink. "We made it," he said softly to no one. "We actually made it." On the bridge of the battleship Eternal Dawn, Admiral Cho Minho received orders to stand down from combat readiness. He read them twice, then smiled for the first time in months. "All ships, this is the Admiral," he announced to the fleet. "Stand down from alert status. The crisis is over. We have achieved our objectives." Cheers erupted across the communication channels. Cho Min-ho let them celebrate for a moment before continuing. "But remember this day. Remember how close we came to war? Remember that peace is not given, it is earned. And remember that we must always be ready to earn it again." He ended the transmission and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing. Humanity's place in it would never be the same. "Today we earned their respect," he recorded in his log. "Tomorrow, we must earn their trust. The work is just beginning." In the grand chamber, the ceremony was ending. Delegates were departing. Conversations were breaking into smaller groups. And the formal atmosphere was giving way to something almost normal. Ambassador Park Yuna stood alone for a moment, looking up at the vast dome of the chamber. Captain Lee Taeho approached her quietly. "Ambassador, it is over." Park Yuna shook her head. "No, Captain. It is just beginning." She turned to look at him. "Do you know what I see when I look at these aliens?" "What do you see?" "I see species that ruled the galaxy for 100,000 years without ever being challenged. I see civilizations that forgot what it means to struggle, to fight for survival, to earn their place. And I see that they are watching us now. They are afraid of what we might become. Should they be afraid?" Park Yuna considered the question. "Perhaps. But not for the reasons they think. They fear that we will conquer them, dominate them, treat them as they treated us. They are wrong. Humanity has no interest in empire. Then what do we want? We want what we have always wanted: to explore, to discover, to build, to become something greater than we are." She smiled slightly. "We want the stars, Captain. All of them. And now, finally, no one can stop us from reaching them. Thousands of light years away, on a deep space exploration vessel called the Far Horizon, young Ensign Beek Ji-soo watched the news broadcasts from Station Nexus Prime. She was barely 22 years old, the youngest officer on her ship. She had been born after humanity joined the Assembly, and she had grown up knowing nothing but the restrictions and limitations that older generations had fought against. Now, those restrictions were gone. Her captain, a weathered woman named Commander Shin Murray, stood beside her. "What are you thinking, Ensign?" Beek Ji-soo looked away from the screen, out through the observation window at the endless darkness of unexplored space. Stars gleamed in the distance, each one a mystery waiting to be solved. "I am thinking about the future, Commander." "What about it?" Beek Ji-soo smiled. "I am thinking that it belongs to us now." The Far Horizon accelerated toward the unknown, carrying humanity's hope toward new horizons. Behind them, the galaxy adjusted to a new reality. Ahead of them, infinity waited, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, humanity's true journey was finally beginning.